behind these huge steel doors, I found a treasure house of music, the originals of the finest records ever made by Victor.
It's 2022 now, and it's no longer a fad. Vinyl records have exploded in the last decade.
Taylor Swift is responding to the news that her catalog of her first 6 albums have now been sold again.
Are you satisfied with the image you've established?
Well, the image is one thing, and a human being is another, you know.
Hey everyone, my name is Roshita Thomas, and my thesis is titled Scratching the Surface, Lifecycle of the Record Album Design. So, being born into a family where my great-grandfather could play up to 11 instruments, my grandma was a trained vocalist, my grandfather's love for records, music has always been woven into my life. So even though I completed my undergraduate degree in architectural design, I chose to take a leap of faith and started working as a designer and talent manager. I started off at a media and events agency and then worked as the assistant manager to an independent musician, Pratik Kuhad, essentially managing all creative content. And that included designing posters, music videos, arranging press photos, Instagram creatives, merchandise, record album art, you name it. So I moved from Bombay to New York last August, and walking around New York City, visiting record stores, became a way for me to cope with homesickness. Playing records that my grandpa loved tethered me to the city. But when I have access to unlimited music on my smartphone, why am I at a record store? Why is anyone here? And this is where my research begins. On a relatively cold October morning, I read an article in the New York Times titled, "Vinyl is selling so well that it's getting hard to sell vinyl." Every article I found thereafter echoed the same announcement, or to put it simply, there had been a resurgence of records. Which brings me to my 2 key questions that help tie this research together. 1, how does the life cycle of the record shed light on its commercial success today? 2, what can we learn from the materialization and dematerialization of music? Music took on many shapes and forms through the years. Before the record industry boom in 1920, sudden fall in 1932, decline in 1998, and the gradual resurgence up until 2021. To understand the record's relevance, let's go back in time. What was it and what is it today? I'll explain this under 5 broad categories. First, this is the first time music came home. So it all began with what Edison called the speaking machine. In 1877, Thomas Alva Edison narrated the nursery rhyme, "Mary Had a Little Lamb," into a large tube-like machine with a cylindrical record that he designed, and a crackling playback of the rhyme was heard. And while Edison was still operating, in 1887, Emil Berliner, a German immigrant who settled in Washington, D.C., worked on improving Edison's original design and innovated the way sound was physically recorded onto a new material and shape, giving birth to the first ever gramophone and the 78 RPM shellac flat discs in 1888. RCA Victor acquired the patent for the design in 1901, and eventually it came to be known as the Victor Red Seal. The record captured sound, shifting music from live orchestras in public spaces to the comfort of our private homes. It became a new medium to advertise music, or as I'd like to call it, the face value of music. A quick note, shellac was being produced during the precipice of World War I, which lasted from 1914 to 18, and the public were asked to donate records for soldiers overseas, a way to stimulate morale. And broken records were being taken to recycle. That's odd, right? Shellac was not just being used to produce records, it was being recycled to produce explosives. The onset of the Great Depression in 1929, along with the growing popularity of radios, caused a near total collapse of the record industry in the early 1930s. But the stage was being set for yet another drastic change in the record industry business. In 1938, A 23-year-old designer from Brooklyn graduated from Parsons School of Design and was immediately offered a job. Alex Steinweiss was invited by Columbia Records to redesign the packaging for brittle shellac records to prevent damage. The packaging project soon morphed into a canvas for Steinweiss and the first ever designed album cover for a Rodgers and Hart album emerged from Columbia in 1939. Cover art sold records. Sales for Bruno Walter's recording of Beethoven's Symphony, designed by Steinweiss, increased sales by 800% because of a new invention in the music marketing industry. Steinweiss's artistic dexterity and brushstrokes dominated his canvas. Photographs were rarely featured in his work. Gradually, every element on the record began to advertise musicians as commodities and not just music. The record became synonymous with the face of music. But with the evolution of photography in the 50s, personalities of musicians began being manufactured for the record and other mediums. Which leads me to my third category, controlling a musician's public image. One young man became the face of a genre in the 50s, the face of rock and roll. His name, Elvis Presley. So, while frequenting record stores, I found an album that my grandpa played on a loop. It was the Elvis Presley 1956 debut album. The front featured Elvis in a blazer on stage, legs spread apart, his body pulled back from his acoustic guitar, gel-clumped hair, jawline of the Greek gods. Perfectly aligned incisors, mouth wide open singing, and his eyes shut as he strums. And the liner notes at the back read, Elvis is the most original protagonist of popular rhythm songs on the scene today. His belting style stands out vividly on records, and his personal appearances accounts for his universal popularity, especially amongst teenage audience. Woo. Colonel Parker, who managed Presley at RCA, did everything in his power to build this image that sold these very records. Building an image in public is strategic. Parker was instrumental in making Elvis the face of rock and roll. Presley wasn't just a musician and entertainer. He was Elvis, a commodity the record birthed. The album was only becoming part of a larger media landscape. Artists weren't just creating music anymore. They were entertainers and public figures who had to live up to an expectation for their audience, held to a standard that was staged by their managers, advertisers, and fortified by the record.
Are you satisfied with the image you've established?
Well, the image is one thing, and a human being is another, you know.
How close is the image to the man?
It's very hard to live up to an image, I'll put it that way.
With the evolution of the Walkman, Discman, MP3s, iPods, streaming platforms, mediums of music consumption were on its way towards dematerialization. But distribution rights, branding, and identity still lay in the hands of juggernaut labels, agencies, and not musicians. Which brings me to my fourth category, how records made ownership of music a clearer issue. The issue. I was told a story by a record store manager at Captured Tracks Record in Greenpoint, Brooklyn. And on the morning of November 12th, 2021, hordes of young fans showed up at record stores wanting to purchase Taylor Swift's new album, Red, that she released through Republic Records. Swift had re-recorded her fourth studio album after a spat with her former manager, Scooter Braun, who sold her master recordings despite her refusal. Swift had tweeted regarding the early release of her 4-disc vinyl that added to the frenzy amongst fans, and the physical sale and purchase of her record visibly displayed young fans supporting her. The market wanted her new recordings. By re-recording her songs, she essentially devalued her own master recordings that Braun sold. Master recordings of any album earn revenue through multiple avenues, including streaming, sales, sampling, public broadcast, use in film, commercials, multiple. So Swift had been promoting her albums for months before it dropped through multiple platforms, but it was her first TikTok that garnered attention. She joined the platform to share this announcement with her teenage audience. MRC Data, which is a data and analytics provider to the music business and consumers, teamed up with TikTok recently to investigate how the social media platform influences music discovery. Their study found that 75% of users say that they discover new artists through TikTok. On TikTok, the hashtag vinyl records has 512.3 million views as of May 2022. Which brings me to my last category. So tell me, what is TikTok or any other social media platform? Is it a medium of expression, a signifier of taste? Only the best looking versions of our personal moments, memories, music, and identities are shared. I watched a gazillion videos of relatively young audiophiles playing music on their record players. Within an art-directed frame sits a coarsely record player, an album playing in the background, a cover carefully placed in the frame. Minimal text that is a preview to what the TikTok may be. Overburdened by technology, some prefer the record as a medium of consumption due to its limited nature, and some use it as a prop to express themselves. While they do prefer the ease and access of streaming platforms, some teens choose to buy music for reasons beyond the face value. And with streaming platforms paying artists little to no money, the record becomes an object to directly pay a musician for their work. Spotify pays on an average of, I don't even know how to say that number, per playback. Basically, a musician has to reach 250 listeners to earn at least $1. The record's revival cannot be conformed to a one-dimensional source or reason. It used to be a signifier of status. It used to be the face value of music. Today, that very object is being used to question power and as a signifier of taste. The almost 145-year-old record changed our relationship with technology, marketing, and music forever. By viewing musicians only as commodities, talent agencies and record labels are not only abstracting the moral complexity of making, buying, and selling music, but they're also actively designing desires at a scale without ethical layers, leading to unrealistic ideas of success, unhealthy power play, and lack of ethics that places control in the wrong hands. This moment becomes an opportunity to rethink, redesign, and reinvent how large the scale is when it comes to music sales, ownership, and advertising. To look beyond the polarizing dualism of consumers and corporations and foster collective empowerment for musicians and music. A shared understanding that prevents agencies from letting momentary gains and selfish desires shape our futures. Addressing the emerging ethical question and implications of understanding that beyond the object, there are people and there is craft. It's not just a source of capital, but history, culture, and change enfolded in one single object. Thank you.